Okay, I have 6 o'clock. I have one member of the audience in attendance. It's Jim Ecker, who also sits on the Plan Commission. So that's all that is present at this time at the boardroom. I'd like to call the May 5th, 2020 board meeting to order. Ryan Walter, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America
and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you.
Allison, if you would please take a roll call.
Trustee Conan?
Here.
Trustee Walter?
Here.
Trustee Lindy?
Here.
Trustee Cook?
Here.
Trustee Montalto?
Here.
Trustee Herron?
Here.
President Michael?
Here. Okay, we have roughly 30 total participants of this meeting, including the people that are on the web. There are no public hearings. For appointments and presentations, can I get a motion to approve Matt Akins to the Police Pension Board?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Any questions? Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor state aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Opposed or in favor? Trustee Conan, were you in favor or opposed?
Aye. In favor.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Lindy, were you in favor or opposed?
In favor.
Okay, it came across a little late, so sorry about that.
All right, sorry.
Okay, so that was unanimous. Thank you. At this time, I'd like to open up public comment on items to be discussed tonight. Under tonight's consent agenda, we have approval of the minute, approval of the vouchers, proclamation regarding Public Service Recognition Week, proclamation regarding National Public Works Week. Under discussion items, we'll talk about disconnecting the Crown property and electric utility location for new residential construction. I'd like to open that public comment, open up at this time. You will be limited to 3 minutes. The clerk will announce when there's 30 seconds left before your time's out, and then she will let you know when time has expired and ask that you please stop talking at 3 minutes. So with that, Allison, would you like to open up the floor, or do you have any other parameters you'd like to set?
No, only that we can't identify the callers. So it's just going to be kind of whoever we hear first, someone needs to go first, and then that person will be 3 minutes. But I can't, if I mute them, they can't speak up. So we'll just have to kind of work our way through it.
Okay. May we get our first public comment, please?
Is there any particular order?
Unfortunately, there is not for people that are calling in. So if you'd like to start, please do.
Right. Okay. So I will. In respect with everyone's time, I have comments that I provided in writing to the board that would probably be 5 minutes. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to shorten it and get within my 3-minute time frame. My name is Roy Bost, and I live with my wife Bobby in the Hannaford Farm subdivision. We are here since 2014, have enjoyed Sugar Grove and its rural nature. 2 of our 3 adult children live here, as do all 3 of our grandchildren. So we are personally and heavily invested in the responsible development of Sugar Grove, and that's our perspective. I'm here to recommend that I strongly urge the board to not approve the Crown petition to disconnect. Instead, I urge the board to seek legal advice on what further measures the village can take in order to protect the residents of the village as well as the future of the village. Let me talk a little bit about what I've read and my observations on that. Back in the, I think it was 2014, the board passed an ordinance, an annexation ordinance, and it listed what the village wanted out of this development. They thought it was going to further the planning objectives of the village. It was going to have substantial benefits to the village. It will permit orderly growth, planning, and development of the village. Will increase the tax base of the village. And these are quotes. Will inure to the benefit and improvement of the village and its residents, and will otherwise enhance and promote the general welfare of the village and its residents. I maintain that what began as a project to develop a residential community on the property that's in question is now it's gone away from the residential aspect and is focusing solely on building commercial warehouses. And this, I would maintain, serves none of those benefits that were listed by the board in the ordinance annexing the property. So for that reason, I think that what we're seeing ill serves the people of Sugar Grove. And Sugar Grove, in its petition, basically says that they have not been able to come to mutually acceptable terms with the village board.
The speaker has 30 seconds left.
Okay. Well, the reason that there's not mutually acceptable terms is they've changed the nature of the project, which essentially they're petitioning for relief from a situation that Crown itself has made. And I believe that could be bad faith. And I urge that the board seek legal advice whether or not this is something that is potentially actionable to protect the people. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak tonight.
Thank you. Next caller, if you'd like to make a public comment. If there's a caller, please speak up if you'd like to make a public comment. Okay. No further public comment?
Sean, I do have 5 other email comments that to be read.
Okay. Somebody has some background noise. If you could please mute your computer or your phone so that that background music is not interrupting the meeting. Thank you. Okay, Allison.
Okay. The first email is from Michael Kalina. I hope the village board has had discussions with Elburn or any other community that could annex the said property to get their feeling of what they would allow Crown to build. If Crown gets approval to build what Sugar Grove has turned down, what benefit was it to not receive the tax revenue? Talk to Yorkville, who turned down the Menards distribution center, and Plano approved it across the street from Yorkville and gets all of the truck traffic and no tax revenue. The next comment is from Mike and Linda Assel. To Sugar Grove Village Board members, it is with tremendous disappointment that we are compelled to write this email to you, the Village of Sugar Grove Board of Trustees, regarding the development of the Crown Properties land along I-88. We attended all of the earlier public meetings and spoke in opposition of the development, along with a tremendous collection of extremely talented neighbors. So compelling was the information that was presented that Crown withdrew its request for rezoning and retreated to develop a new game plan for accomplishing their goal of paving over 700 acres of fertile farmland, ultimately destroying the pristine area in which we live and the aquifers from which we drink. Please remember all of the passion, compelling arguments, and scientific data that was presented at the earlier public hearings and the overwhelming conviction the community voiced at the last village board election. All of the arguments that were valid and compelling several months ago are still valid and compelling today. We ask that you make it as difficult as possible for Crown to develop this property. We ask that you do not agree to disconnect the Crown property from Sugar Grove. We ask that you work with and educate your colleagues on the Village Board of Elburn by sharing the data and findings that were presented at the earlier Sugar Grove public meetings. The data and findings presented were extremely compelling, graphically detailing the detriment and irrefutable damage to our quality of life that will be inflicted by the proposed Crown development. We believe that in our hearts that any human being who values living in the beautiful semi-rural area in which we live would not be willing to lose it all for the sake of this development and making the billionaire Crown family more wealthy than they already are. We ask that you unanimously agree to vote no to disconnecting the Crown property from Sugar Grove. The next comment is from Pat and Mike Fagel. I think it would be in the best interest of the citizens and the village to come to an equitable and logical agreement that is amenable to all. If Crown goes to another community, the distance of their services, etc., would still have the facilities in our neighborhood. Regardless, they will still be our neighbor. Let's make the best of this. We will be a much better neighbor as a team member. Crown will do something with their property. That is a given. Wouldn't it be better to have a friend than an enemy? We have lived in the village since 2005. Change is inevitable. Growth is better planned. The next comment is from Peg Bombeck. We are very against development by, Len and Peg Bombeck. We are very against development by Crown development, whether it is in Sugar Grove or Elburn. We moved out this way to be in the country, not to be by warehouses. This would bring down the values of our houses. And the final comment is from Kathy Scott. I would like Sugar Grove to keep the Crown property annexed to Sugar Grove, as this would provide more opportunity for the village to control the use of the property. Those are all the comments that were received.
Thank you. Okay, I'll put out one more call. Any other callers that would like to make a public comment before we close the public hearing? After we close the public hearing, there will be no other option to participate.
Sorry, just to be clear, there is no public hearing on this issue. It's just public.
Public comment, correct. Thank you. Okay, one last more caller. Okay, hearing none, at this time I will close out the public comment portion of our agenda. Thank you all. Okay, is Joe Wolf by chance? Joe Wolf has not submitted any airport reports, so we'll move on from there. May I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Is it Jen Corman? Trustee Herron, second?
Yes, John.
Okay. Any requests to remove an item from the consent agenda? Again, we're approving the minutes, approving the vouchers, a proclamation regarding Public Service Recognition Week, and a proclamation regarding National Public Works Week. Okay. Not hearing any requests to remove an item. Roll call, please. Allison.
Trustee Conan?
Aye.
Trustee Herron?
Aye.
Trustee Walter?
Aye.
Trustee Lindy?
Aye.
Trustee Cook?
Aye.
Trustee Montalto?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Okay, now for discussion purposes, I'd like to bring up the question of the request by Crown Development to disconnect their property from the village of Sugar Grove based on the annexation agreement that was entered into in 2013. Is there any discussion regarding this request for de-annexation?
I had a question and some on that. As I was reading the annexation agreement under the de-annexation portion, my question is, it seems like, and I'm not an attorney, but it seems like that it implies that they would need to have at least a vote or something from the village in some form to be able to de-annex, and saying that that we didn't meet what they were expecting, but yet they've had no vote, no official say from the village whatsoever. So my question is, don't they need to go through that process so they can get an official answer before they can say, oh, the village says they don't want to do what we want to do, so we want to de-annex?
I can answer that for you. The language is not entirely clear, but we find that it would be likely that if this were to go to court, the court would find that they have more or less exhausted their process in having gone through the application petition, having had the hearings that they did have. Courts tend to not make parties go through exercises in futility. So if the village wanted to take the position that they wanted them to put through a new application, we're not entirely sure that a court would agree that that was the requirement. But I mean, there is no clear 100% answer one way or the other. But based on the case law that does exist, we do not believe that that is in fact a requirement.
It just seems to say, I mean, why did we even have this annexation agreement if we said at any point in time you can take it out? It seemed to me that they would go through a process and we would say yes or no, and then they would have the option if they didn't like what we said, they can go away. It just seems like, are we setting a precedence that, to other builders and developers that, you don't even go through the process if we annex you? I don't know. I seem to would like them to make a good faith effort to put forth something if they didn't even get any kind of vote from any, the planning board or us. It seems like they're not negotiating with good faith effort. That's just my concern.
Heidi, I think we asked Crown Development to enter into this agreement, one, so that the village would have some control, but also so we could get them to contribute financially to the construction of the interchange. And by doing this, they were willing to contribute $625,000 towards the construction of the ramps, as opposed to the village going financially by itself.
So this was basically to help pay for to get them to pay for that, which is why it seems like it is written very much toward the annexation agreement. Seems very pro-owner of the property, from what I read. But like I said, my expertise is not in legal area, but it just, like I said, when I read it, it seems like they need to at least ask the village and get an answer, but it seems like they haven't even asked an answer, gotten any kind of answer. That's just my thought on it.
Yeah, understood. In the past, though, what a court is going to look at, too, is not necessarily whether or not they actually got an official vote, but also at all the steps they took leading up until that process. And in this case, there were, a number of public hearings in which huge amounts of people showed up week after week to the point where it was being continued. So there was a long, drawn-out process, even though the petition did not end up going forward to final votes. But that isn't completely, just because there was no vote doesn't mean that there was no process. It's not a completely mutually exclusive thing. And when you look at the annexation agreement itself, there are two provisions that work together. One is that gives the village ultimate authority over what they do and do not want to approve on that land. It's very open-ended as the village gets the final say. But on the flip side, it does give Crown a very strong right to disconnect if they can't meet what the village wants. So that's why the Crown provision for disconnection is basically if they ask, the village agrees to disconnect, because on the flip side, the village got so much control during that negotiation process.
Well, could I ask a quick question?
Of course.
With the talking about what Heidi's talking about with the with the official vote, even though we didn't have an official vote, Crown did meet with all the trustees, whether, individually with staff at a controlled meeting or with another trustee. There was no more than 2 at each of these meetings, but it's my understanding that the majority of the trustees were against the proposal. So is that technically, even though it's not a formal vote, is that something they could use to say, well, it was obvious it wasn't going to go forward?
I mean, what a court's going to do is they would look at the totality of the circumstances. So certainly conversations that they had, and all the different communications and all the different presentations and meetings that they attended would play into it. So while a formal vote, is one part of that, it's not the only part of that. So certainly, all the communications during the course of the years prior and the feedback that they received would be pertinent.
Okay.
I just want to make a comment. I'm sorry. Ryan, you want to go first?
You, go ahead.
No, my comment is just that even in some of the written responses that the village has received for public comment tonight, that copied out, that is not my job. It seems like the perception of the residents in the village that at least wrote in is that we have some way to keep them here. And Laura, you can explain on this call that the way the board has been advised is that we really don't have a legal position, that Crown wants to disconnect, and per that annexation agreement, they're allowed to, versus it look as if we're not willing to work with them, because I think every single board member that is on this call wants to work with Crown. We would like them to develop their property. It is their choice to leave the village. And there's not much that we are being told that we have as a leg to stand on to keep them here.
Yeah, this is no longer a zoning matter. It's become a matter of contract. And what the contract says, is that there's these conditions of development that have to be met, that both parties have to agree on. And if in Crown's opinion, those conditions have not been met, they have the right to disconnect, and then the village will disconnect them within, a certain amount of time following that petition. The petition was received back, I believe, in early February. The board has had various communications and received a number of opinions, which I believe have addressed most, if not all, of the comments that have come through the public during the 2 months after that. We've taken a look at many things, and, it's not always can an argument be made, because of course an argument can be made, on any number of issues, but what's the probability of success on that argument, and how many resources and how much taxpayer dollars are you spending making an argument, and at the end of the day, where is that argument going to get you? So of course, the village has looked at all these things, and what the opinion, that we have, and that, numerous other consultants have had as well, is because of the language of the contract, and it saying that, Crown can disconnect if these conditions aren't met, there really isn't a strong argument at this point to be made that would prevent them from disconnecting.
Laura, could you touch upon
that was going to be
the costs for us too? I'm sorry, Ryan.
I was just going to say,
Go ahead, Ryan.
I was going to be my exact same comment and question. Emails we received, I've gotten a few phone calls and emails personally this week with people not understanding. So obviously this is a difficult topic to understand everything. So there's so many pieces to it. But once people hear the facts and the contractual agreement, and that they can legally de-annex, people are then understanding. But you just, Laura, you just explained what I was hoping the callers on this call could hear. And I just wanted everybody to be clear that it's not ultimately the village's decision to allow them just to leave. It's not.
Yeah, it's not correct. At this point, it's a contractual, it's an interpretation of a contractual obligation, that we have to fulfill.
And Laura, what I was going to touch upon was what I believe the conversation we had about this prior was that as a board was the cost the village could incur fighting something that there's probably a good chance we're not going to win. And if my memory serves me right, if they file federally, we might even be responsible for not only our attorney's fees, but their attorney's fees. And there's a possibility that they could try and allege that we've cost their business money by not being able to develop by a certain time. So the cost could be astronomical to the village.
Yeah, it's always hard to speculate, and we don't like getting in the business of, going too far down any rabbit hole, but we do explore, when we're in a situation, we look at it under the totality of the circumstances, what we think all the, different routes would lead us to, how much money it takes to get there, what the probability of success is, and all those factors go into an argument. So even if, let's make an argument and you win, where does that get you at the end of the day? Does it get you the result you want, or does it just get you back at square one where you're starting over? And that's another, factor that we want to consider when determining, how to address certain situations.
Could I ask, if Crown is de-annexed, is there any other cleanup we need to do for the current zoning regulations there?
Cleanup.
Any changes, or just stays the way it is? Again,
I think it would depend on what the next steps are. There would be nothing, immediately that would be required, but I think what the next steps would depend on what Crown wishes to do next.
So if they tried to go through another entity or through the county or through Elburn or something, there's no way we could change any zoning or anything to help, block that or anything?
Out of the village, you wouldn't have control over what their zoning is. You would have certain rights depending, jurisdictional rights within your, 1.5 to some extent.
Right. Yeah.
But again, it would depend on what they were seeking, would depend on what the village's potential, I
didn't know how much actual discretion we have over that 1.5, or if it's a moot point or what. But
it depends on, I guess, whether, where they go and what they're trying to do. It depends on what, what weight of authority the village would have, or weight of comments.
Okay. I got you.
Okay. Any other comments or questions for staff or council?
I just wanted to try to clarify this. I'm very much of a rules follower, and it seems like it was kind of, they have to do this in order to de-annex. And I understand that it is vague in the contract. I thought it was just me not being able to read legalese very well. But it would be up to a court to decide contract law and whether or not they have done what is required per contract to de-annex. And you're saying that you've researched it and it is much more likely than not that they would prevail, and that would cost us in legal fees to go through that court battle, and potentially even additional legal fees if it went to a federal battle like Rick was talking about. I'm just trying to weigh the pros and cons here, and it seems like if we were to prevail, all we do is now we have somebody who's forced to go through the process that can easily then just disconnect because they will just choose not to change anything they have presented. Is that correct?
Correct. I mean, you can't require, yes, if they go back and go through the process, you can't require what they present to you or not present to you. So if their plan was the same, and if the board, does not want to approve what the prior plan was, forcing them to go back through the same process with the same information and then coming to a vote, again, that's why courts don't, that's why it's not clear that they'd require it in the first place, because if you kind of know that that's where things are going, now it looks as though the village is requiring them to spend additional money, and resources. And courts generally are very, they don't like people not being able to do things with their land, for lack of a better term. So, yeah, it's more or less an exercise in futility at that point. So you're not getting, the village requiring them to go back through the process still isn't getting them the end result unless there's different information, at which point they believe things would be different or the outcome would be different.
Okay.
Any other discussion on this matter?
No.
Okay. All right. I think if tables were turned and we were asking Crown to abide by a contract, we would want them to honor it, and I think they're asking us to honor it. number of board members have been in touch with Elburn and told them our issues with the Crown plan. So we've been asked by our residents to convey our feelings or our position on the Crown development. So I think we've extended our knowledge to Elburn. It's for them to take it under advisement and see if Crown does proceed with them. But I'm hoping that things work out and we can eventually get Crown to come back with a mutually agreeable development plan for that property. Okay, if there's no other comment, we can put this on the agenda for the next board meeting to take action. Thank you. Electric utility location for new residential construction. From my day job, my building experience, I would ask that we not approve this. I think that was staff's recommendation as well. There really are no good plans that ComEd has come up with as to how they're going to do this. They want communities to approve this ordinance and without any commitment on their behalf of how they're going to protect utilities like the village's water and sanitary from trenching into these power lines, what type of devices they're going to use. Are they going to use the vaults that MetroNet is using for their vaults to put the cables in, or are they going to do pedestals, which we're used to seeing in our backyard? So I think there's been a lack of commitment from ComEd, even though they say it's been done throughout the rest of the United States. They have not come up with any plans to at least prove to the building industry that this is a thought out project.
Sean, the purpose of the ordinance would be to continue the requirement of electric and phone and those utilities in the rear yards.
Okay.
So,
Thank you, Tony. I was not clear on that.
I know it depending sometimes on when you look at the language, is it for it or against it? So what we're doing with the ordinance is saying we want electrical and phone utilities to continue in the rear yards as our current practice.
Right.
Okay, I'm corrected. I'd like to approve this ordinance as written then. So I apologize. I did not get that from the way the memo was written.
Yeah, I agree with you, Sean, too. If I just make a comment on it that, again, with no clear plan on what they want to do in the front, you don't know whether they're going to be putting up poles or putting up boxes. And I know from personal experience, just last summer, Tony came over a couple of times because we were having internet service problems with stuff that was in the front because streetlights were interfering with the internet. So there's too much stuff out there already. And if you have a situation like I did, every time the street lights went on, my internet went off. It just had to do with a faulty street light about 3 street lights down, had a bad ballast. But if those things interfere with each other, we definitely don't want to put anything else in the street. So,
can someone confirm ComEd is wanting to put it in the front, right?
They are, yes.
Okay, right. Yeah, I just wanted to comment because I, in my home, been here for 7 years, and there was an extremely unsightly, back then it was Ameritech, now it's AT&T. It was a 3-foot high cylinder directly smack dab in the front of our yard, right along the sidewalk or pathway. Very unsightly. People would always comment to me, why is that there? I had tried with AT&T for 6 years. Can you do something about this? They finally last year came back and said that was never in service. We'll remove it. I could not landscape around it. I couldn't do anything to screen it. If I put very dense shrubs, that would look extremely odd because it was right up against the sidewalk. So it just does not make sense to put these above ground utilities in people's front yards. This was not off to the side. It was literally within the foundation of my home when you're sitting in the front of it. So, I don't know of any resident that would want these boxes and cylinders and towers in their front yards.
Okay. All right. Well, we could put that on the agenda for next week as well to take action. Moving on to staff reports. Any questions for staff?
I don't have a question, but I want to just advise Tony that I saw the guys putting up the sign on Galena and Gordon. Welcome to the village again, and the sign looks great, and I think it's a great location, and all the guys were wearing masks while they were working. So I was very happy when I drove by and saw them digging. So.
Thank you.
It does look like deconstruction's making good progress at the intersection of Bliss and 47. They were out there last week in the rain doing some work. So according to the schedule, they're ahead of schedule at this point?
Correct, because their official start date was going to be May 1st, and they started ahead of time. So they've got a lot of that work done before their actual start date.
Great. Great. Okay. Any other questions for staff? Okay. Trustee reports. Trustee Herron?
Nothing to report.
Okay. Trustee Cook?
Nothing new to report.
Trustee Conan?
Just that Allison has been good enough to put the IDOT Adopt a Highway stuff on the village Facebook page. And we had to postpone I can't even remember, it was in April, but just that so the residents know that is the requirement of the state that none of that stuff go forward right now. So I'm waiting to hear back. I assume nothing's going to happen until June while we have our stay-at-home order in place. So there will be no cleanup going on in the month of May. That's all.
Okay. Trustee Lindy?
Nothing to report.
Trustee Montalto?
Just that I attended a Convention Bureau meeting online the other day. They used Zoom, and we got a majority of the board to log in at 10 o'clock in the morning and held the first meeting in a couple of months. So it's there's concerns about next year as far as money coming into the convention and stuff like that for tourism. We don't know what's going to happen with all this. So far, they've received all their payments this year, but the state's spending a lot of money, and they're hoping that they don't trim the tourism budget for next year to try and make up some of it. So, because they kind of look forward to once things open back up, people are going to be tired of being inside. They're going to want to get out. They're going to do stuff, and that hopefully the tourism will help bring back some normalcy in the world. So.
Okay. Trustee Walter?
Nothing, thank you.
Okay. President's report. I participated in a senior luncheon drive-through last Tuesday at the community house, and we served over 120 lunches. So it was a nice day and well attended. It was that Julie Walker and Chris Walker put it together along with the township and the park district. So it was good to be a part of that. We have maintained our weekly calls to different governmental entities within the village of Sugar Grove, and it's been very productive, exchanging information, helping out, getting masks. Allison's been very helpful to the other taxing bodies about go to meeting, different things like that. So it's been productive, and I hope we continue that even after this event. I did hear that Wabansie Community College is going to have their campus closed for the summer, so that's unfortunate. And then I've not heard any plans for Canelan's graduation, but our thoughts are with the seniors and the athletes that did not get to participate in spring sports due to the coronavirus. So, but that's it for me. Brent, any need to go to closed session?
I don't have any.
Okay. Any other discussion come before the board? Hearing none. Motion to adjourn.
Make that motion.
Second.
Second by Trustee Herron. All those in favor, or let's do it individually. It's too hard to do all in favor. Roll call, please.
Trustee Montalto?
Aye.
Trustee Herron?
Aye.
Trustee Walter?
Aye.
Trustee Lindy?
Aye.
Trustee Cook?
Aye.
Trustee Koenig?
Aye.
Okay, thank you all. We'll see you in 2 weeks.